Today's guest is Nerdeen Kiswani. She's a Palestinian organizer from New York, the founder and chair of Within Our Lifetime. Instagram deleted both of our accounts. These social media companies are heavily censoring Palestinian content by Palestinians in support of Palestinian liberation, shadow banning, deleting posts. Now, in this case, we've had our account deleted and then obviously restored. Creating content related to Palestine, you have an uphill battle to try to get your content out there.
It just sends a general chilling effect on what we think we can and can't post. They're not even clear about what their guidelines are. Almost
100%.
Every single strike we get is for violent or dangerous organizations. A Palestinian, Hisham Abu Hawash, political prisoner, gets COVID-19 and in jail. Oh, that means, violent or dangerous organizations.
The problem facing Israel today is not the result of misinformation, but of a growing awareness of the reality of Israeli apartheid.
We have a rogue nuclear power worried about what we post on Instagram.
Hello and welcome to episode 48 of the Palestine Pod, the weekly podcast where we break down the latest headlines dealing with Palestine from all over the world and bring you stories, commentary, and interviews with the aim of supporting the Palestinian struggle for justice and equal rights. I'm one of your hosts, Lara E. You might know me from Instagram as @GazanGirl, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mikey B.
What's up, y'all? Mikey B on TikTok, Michael Schertzer on Instagram, and you can call me Mikey Intifada if you're going to flag this episode for deletion.
Yes, before we get into today's episode, please like, comment, and subscribe if you hang out with us on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast app, subscribe and leave a review. As always, you can find our full episodes and sources on Palestinepod.com. And if you want to get involved in the conversation, reach out to us at palestinepod@gmail.com and give us a follow on Instagram at the Palestine Pod. Our account has been restored after it was deleted for the last week, and you may find that you're no longer following us. We've been receiving dozens and dozens of messages from our @the Palestine Pod followers telling us that they have been removed as followers from our account. So please check and make sure that you are still following us. Instagram tends to remove our followers. Let's get right into today's episode. Today's guest is Nerdeen Kiswani. She's a Palestinian organizer from New York City, the founder and chair of Within Our Lifetime, a community organization revitalizing the revolutionary spirit of the Palestinians in exile in pursuit of liberation. Nerdeen is a 3L at the CUNY School of Law, where she is the president of SJP, and she currently interns with the National Lawyers Guild International Committee, where she's working on efforts to revoke the U.S. settler organizations of their tax exemption status, along with student and legal organizations and youth groups in Palestine. Nerdeen, welcome to the Palestine Pod.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're so honored to have you, one of the premier organizers for Palestinian human rights in the United States.
I mean, y'all are doing that work through your podcast also. I also consider it organizing. It's another form of organizing communities and other communities about, political education surrounding Palestine.
Totally.
Absolutely. And, we have just met, literally, and Instagram brought us together, not because we necessarily found each other on Instagram, but because Instagram deleted both of our accounts. And that is the subject, really, of today's episode. We want to get into social media censorship. It's unfortunately still something that we are dealing with as Palestinian organizers, using social media to spread education and to connect with other organizers. And this is something that we certainly saw during the May 2021 assaults on Gaza. And we are seeing renewed efforts in the last several weeks to not necessarily delete certain specific posts, but actually get rid of our accounts altogether. So the Palestine Pod account was deleted around a week ago. Your account Within Our Lifetime was also deleted. And we both have been in a struggle for the last week to get our accounts back. So maybe why don't you start just by telling us what happened with Within Our Lifetime, and is your account back? What did it take to get it back? And did you get any justification from Instagram on why it was removed?
It was taken down on March 8th, which is International Women's Day, less than an hour after we had put out a post celebrating Palestinian women in history. And we made a collage of, all these different Palestinian women, from Fatima Bernawi, who was the first female Palestinian political prisoner, Afro-Palestinian who fought for Palestine, to Ruba Asi, who is a recent political prisoner who was freed. And of course, Leila Khaled, who holds such an important place in our history, who is part of the collective mindset of every Palestinian, who grew up listening and hearing stories about her and her courageous, heroic acts. So we know that whenever we talk about Layla Khaled very explicitly, it gets flagged recently, but we used to be able to post about her all the time without issue. But, shortly after we made this post, it was taken down and our entire Instagram was deleted. They've taken down our post before, and our page would kind of disappear for a few minutes, maybe less than an hour. But this time it was gone for at least 4 days.
And when the page was deleted, did you get any justification in the moment for why it was deleted?
Every reason they've ever given us is violent. You're promoting violent or dangerous, harmful organizations. I don't have the exact verbiage, but they had the picture that they use to say your post has been removed was a photo of a Palestinian woman holding her heels in one hand and then a rock in the other. And you don't even see what she's directing it towards, but it just captures that that spirit of resistance. So that's the closest thing we've ever gotten to it. We appealed it. They said that the appeal will get a response in 24 hours. We never got a response in 24 hours. We never got a response at all. The page was just mysteriously put back up, and we don't even get the acknowledgement that they made an error or anything like that. After I opened the Zoom, I got a bunch of notifications that our Instagram is live again. As I opened the Zoom.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because they know we're about to blow this shit up and tell everybody, right? That's why. Well, you know what? It doesn't matter. See, that's almost besides the point, because this actually gets to the topic of the electronic intifada article that we're both quoted in and that we're working on right now, that is hopefully going to be up sometime this week. Journalist Omar was like, hey, do you still want to be in this, because I see you guys got your account back? And I said, it's besides the point. I didn't want to be included in this article just as a way to get my account back. It's really about creating this paper trail and putting it out in the public record that these social media companies are heavily censoring Palestinian content and content by Palestinians in support of Palestinian liberation on the topic of, anything and everything related to Palestine. And so for me, it was really important because it has been now almost a year of heavy censorship, shadow banning, deleting posts. Now, in this case, we've had our account deleted and then obviously restored if you've been, following that. But it's really important that we get this information out there, because we dedicate so much time to fighting with social media companies. The amount of time that Michael and I have devoted to challenging posts that have been deleted, to challenging or to trying to work around the shadow bans and the fact that we have 14,000 followers on our account, but basically almost no one interacts with us. The amount of time that we spend into developing other social media platforms to try to increase our engagement and our reach, even though we have the followers, but we know they're not seeing our stuff as much as they should be seeing it. It feels like we're running uphill and we're constantly having just boulders thrown at us, and we're trying to trying to get there. Meanwhile, everybody else is just walking, casually walking. And it's if you're Palestinian or if you're creating content related to Palestine, well, then you have an uphill battle with these social media companies to try to get your content out there the same way that other people get their content out there. So that's why I said, no, keep us in the article. It's really important to keep this in there, because also it's going to keep happening,
Exactly. And, our pages were both taken down already. So I think that makes them more susceptible to being taken down in the future. It could be permanent next time. Who knows? And it just sends a general chilling effect on what we think we can and can't post, because we don't want to jeopardize our accounts. Right. Even if we want to redact what we put on our Instagram and then just direct our followers and people who keep up with our page to another platform where we can speak more openly and freely, while comporting with Instagram's guidelines. They're not even clear about what their guidelines are. Almost 100%. Every single strike we get is for violent or dangerous organizations. A Palestinian, Hisham Abu Hawash, political prisoner, gets COVID-19 and in jail. Oh, that means, violent or dangerous organization. So it's this racist idea and mindset that they have against all Palestinians. And if it can happen to our pages and people saw that, they're going to be much more likely to, feel the need to censor themselves so they don't end up with the same fate. And, like you said, instead of directing our efforts and energy as much of our efforts and energy as possible to talking about what's going on in Palestine. We have to take, our time out of our day, out of organizing for what, directly is happening in Palestine to talk about this repression. Like, this is the last thing, I want to talk about. I want to
100%
campaigns for political prisoners.
100%. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. It's a distraction. It's a distraction from what's going on, and it's a waste of time. But we have to do it. We have to engage with it because this is where people are. People are on these platforms, so we have to use them. And people are always commenting on our account like, "Oh, it's about time that we create our own app." Okay, cool. Go create it. Like, I'm not a fucking software developer. Everyone that makes this comment, go create an app, and I will put a Palestine Pod account on your app. People who say that don't realize we are already everywhere. We have a Twitter. We have a YouTube. We have our own website. We have Instagram. We're on every single podcast app. It's not about creating a new app. They're all like, "Oh yeah, these companies are all racist. Let's just create our own non-racist app." Okay, cool. Do it and I'll join. I have no problem. But that's not the point. The point is these companies shouldn't be racist to begin with. And you're absolutely right. It's like anything that is related to Palestine gets flagged as being dangerous or violent or hate speech. Mm-hmm. And then when you challenge it, when it comes to posts that are being deleted and you have the opportunity to actually appeal the deletion of that post, then you get it back and they say, "Oh, it was an error." And that's what we saw in May and in the aftermath of May, when a lot of us were getting our posts deleted. To me, the deletion of our accounts, and it's weird that they kind of happen around the same time.
International Women's Day, right?
Yeah. So like, why now? Why now? And what for? Because it's not like we received any alerts or warnings in the lead up to this. We just one day Michael was like, "Hey, did you know about this?" He tried to log in and he saw that we couldn't get into our account. It said our account had been disabled. So my question is why now? And what for? And I would like to share some of the exchanges that I had with Facebook, because I actually managed through Palestine Legal to get in contact with somebody working at Facebook who looked into this. And he provided us an explanation with why our account had been disabled. And so I'd like to read that. But first, maybe we should just start the episode. I don't know. What do you think?
Feels like we've started the episode.
Right after both our accounts get restored. Yes. Crazy.
Yeah, the censorship really brought us all together, huh?
Really, exactly. That's what Zionists do, really. Now we've gotten so much support.
They managed to organize us even more than we were already organized.
I mean, honestly, I don't know if I said this, Michael, but I think getting our account deleted was the best thing that ever happened to us. Because we managed to get a lot of attention. We got some new followers. We got this EI article that's coming out. We're doing this episode here. We got more comments on our post than we've had in literally since we started, So thank you so much for giving us that visibility.
Seriously. And this episode's going to blow up too.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So our account, the Palestine Pod, was deleted around the same time. And when we discovered that it was deleted, it was because Michael tried to log into the account. But interestingly, we were not given any explanation for why it was deleted. So when Michael tried to log into our account, we just received a very vague message that said, and I quote, "Your account has been disabled for violating our terms." Okay, but how? It doesn't say. And then it goes on to say, "Learn how you may be able to restore your account." And it provided us with a link. So we used that link to fill out a basic form. And eventually we got an email on our palestinepod@gmail.com account. And the email directed us to a unique number on a piece of paper and take a picture of ourselves holding that in order to prove our identity. So Michael did that, wrote back to them, included this very bizarre photo of himself, looking like a prisoner, in a bunker.
It was very weird.
They require you to be a prisoner in a bunker and send the photo. Then they write back and say, "We need to verify your identity further." And they include this list of documents that we can use to confirm our identity. In that list, it was basically all documents that relate to a corporation, like the articles of incorporation, a tax filing, a utility bill. And at the bottom of the list, they included domain registration. So Michael goes back and he sends proof that we have registered palestinepod.com. And he sends a screenshot of our Squarespace confirmation that we are owners of that domain. Then they come back and send us the same email, but omitting domain registration from the list of documents that we can use to prove our identity. And then they just say that we have to provide them with articles of incorporation, tax filings, a utility bill, basically documents that relate to a corporation. Michael and I are not an LLC. We are two individuals who run a podcast. This is not like a profitable company. We've actually invested thousands of dollars into this project. We're bleeding cash. This is not, a way to get rich quick. Okay. So
we didn't get into Palestinian organization for the money. Okay.
Yeah. So obviously we couldn't provide any of these documents because they don't exist. They're not applicable to our situation.
It reminds me of when I got pulled over by the police in Thailand and they were like asking me for documents they knew didn't exist, right? They would be like, do you have an international driver's license? And it's like, no, I don't have an intergalactic birth certificate either. You know what I mean? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. It seems like they get mass reports and then they just try to find a reason to get it taken down rather than give you that reason up front, because we never got anything like this. Is the first time I ever hear about anything like this.
Yeah.
So then we're in this situation where it's like we can't even challenge the unjustified deletion of our account because they're not willing to investigate it if we don't first confirm our identity in the way that they require, which in and of itself is bizarre because we have never reported our account as being compromised.
Oh no.
That was never an issue.
Lara,
but all of a sudden they're requiring that as a prerequisite to even having the deletion be reviewed. Yes.
You cut out. You got to start again.
Was frozen for a bit.
Hello?
Oh no.
Dang.
We hear you, but it's your video.
Not them censoring us while we're talking about censorship.
I feel like it always happens.
This always happens. I'm so sorry. Okay, so where did I get cut off? Okay, so let me just pick up that thought. They required us to confirm our identity, even though we never reported our account as compromised. So basically, they're setting up this hurdle to reviewing the deletion, which they themselves carried out, but we cannot satisfy those requirements. So we ended up in this bizarre, purgatory space where we can't get our account back. We can't challenge it because we can't provide these documents. So I reached out to Palestine Legal, and they were very helpful and very reactive. They got us in touch with somebody that works at Facebook in the Middle East. And he was able to review the reason for our account being deleted. He provided us in writing with an explanation, which is even more bizarre than the request for company documents. Okay. And I want to read this to you guys because I think it is so important to understand that we're basically just being like, I don't know, they're just fucking with us. Like, I feel like I'm on a, we're being punked. Like, this is, they're fucking with us.
Slowly and legally. You know what I mean? Like, not quickly, no reveal.
For sure. So here's what he says. This is the individual from Facebook. He says, I've received updates from the team. Please see below. And if you're facing any issues, please do not hesitate to contact me. And this is what the team has said. We have detection tools in place designed to protect users on our platform in accordance with the Instagram terms of use. These tools help identify and prevent abuse of our policies across the platform. So far, so good. Sometimes you may not be aware that the way you're engaging with Instagram is actually in violation of these policies. There are several reasons why our systems might detect suspicious behavior, but a few common examples include automating access to or scraping information from any of our products. I don't know what that means. Scraping information? What does that mean? The next thing they say, providing your login credentials to a third-party application or service that is automating applications or scraping information. The same thing, but just what does that mean? Who knows? I have no idea. Using an app or service to interact with Facebook or Instagram in unauthorized ways. We didn't do that either. We don't use apps to interact with Facebook or Instagram. We're just using Instagram. I don't know what it means. And the last thing they say is your account was shared or compromised and someone is taking actions on your behalf or without your knowledge. Again, we never reported our account as compromised. Our account is not compromised.
But I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to compromise our account a number of times.
Right. Like they try to compromise it and then they tell us that they
It's
deleted
compromised.
it because it was
Hey,
compromised.
something's happened with your account. We're just going to protect you from yourself.
Exactly. It's like they're saying you did all these things, but just in case you say you didn't do them, maybe someone else did it for you. Hey,
So then the email goes on and it keeps talking about collecting information in an automated way without express permission. They say, based on your account's recent activity, our system detected behavior that violates one or more of these policies. Again, they don't ever tell us what is the specific behavior in question that violated or that would have violated these policies. They never point to it. And so I wrote back to the guy and I said, hey, I'm very confused because our account has not engaged in any of these actions. The account is run by myself and my co-host only. We've never relied on automated services to run our Instagram, nor have we ever used applications to interact with Instagram in unauthorized ways. Frankly, neither of us are tech savvy enough to even know what that means or how to do that. So can you please be more specific and let us know the exact activity that was flagged? He came back and he said, actually, I have no idea. And if you'd like, I can arrange for a call between you and our public policy manager for Instagram to answer any of the questions on your mind. So we have accepted that offer and we're going to be speaking with the public policy manager for Instagram to get an idea about why our account was removed and really to push back on some of these explanations, which honestly just seem so pretextual when you know that Instagram and Facebook were both called out by leading human rights organizations, including Human Rights Watch, which published a report in October 2021 about their censorship of Palestinian voices and content.
We went full justified Karen mode. We're like, we need to speak to the manager immediately.
But we do. Like, this is not, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So the story is still developing and ongoing. But the good news is that in the interim, we did manage to get our account restored. And I don't know if it was the intervention of Palestine Legal or getting in touch with this guy from Facebook/Instagram, or if it was because I wrote a strongly worded email after their numerous requests to get documents that don't exist. But the point is,
could have been the public pressure, the campaign of everybody hashtagging, posting, tagging Instagram. So thank you to everybody who engaged in those comments.
And absolutely, Michael. And I do think that played a large part in it as well, because our contact at Palestine Legal told me, she's like, I don't think it's anything that we did. I think it's everything that you guys did, including you reaching out to them, you writing to them, you getting people to post, comment, and report this as a problem, and us reaching out on the back end. The point being that if your account gets deleted by Instagram, there's no process in place to properly challenge that deletion and get it reviewed. Can you imagine just like the people that work there are highly tech savvy, right? They run one of the biggest technology companies in the world. They should be able to put into place a procedure by which somebody whose account was deleted can get that properly and quickly and effectively reviewed. But literally this system doesn't exist, because we had to go around, we had to find an employee, we had to write an email, we had to get people to like at Instagram. I know you went through this, Nerdeen. Can you talk a little bit about what you tried to do to get your account back, because there was no transparent way to do so?
Yeah, I mean, exactly like you're saying, there's no actual legal recourse to be taken with these companies because they are private companies at the end of the day. So they don't care about your, free speech rights, and they don't even have to honor them in the same way, which is something that we should challenge, because, even though it is a private business and there are, many platforms, it's taken up so much space to the point where it's become a part of the public sphere. I would argue this is where people go to get, to follow people, to get their news on Palestine. So it should be treated with that same, to the same respect that any like public university, public organization face scrutiny for abridging people's like First Amendment rights. So,
but not even legal recourse, just recourse within the app itself. Like, can you talk about what you did to try to get your account back? You had to mobilize people as well. Did you write to Facebook/Instagram? Did you try to, reach out to an employee? Did you try to raise I know you launched a pretty big public campaign on Instagram by trying to get people involved. So can you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. We had to launch a rapid response campaign, immediately calling out what Instagram is doing, because it felt like every moment that would go by could jeopardize our account being lost forever. We were also in touch with Palestine Legal. We were also in touch with many employees. I got in contact with a lot of different folks who work at Facebook, Instagram, Meta, sent them the screenshots, which we luckily had from before, of anything that was ever flagged and the reason that they gave. So, we had to be prepared. We had to be documenting. None of this was an afterthought. We were always kind of worried about this thing like haunting us and in the background, that we could get lost at any moment. So we can get deleted at any moment. So yeah, we definitely reached out to as many folks as possible. But I do think the most effective thing is a public campaign. We need to be building backup pages. We need to be getting people, on different platforms, and we need to name and shame what these platforms are doing, which I think is ultimately the best thing that helped us here. Because, even if we weren't able to directly contact certain folks, who work there, I'm sure they've seen that campaign. And anybody who supports Palestine, whether they follow Palestine Legal's newsletter, whether they follow a number of all the other Palestine pages that shared our campaign, they were going to see how unjust and how, unfair this censorship was, and we're going to fight back against it. So I'm sure we'll never get the full reason why we were deleted. And, these corporations want to reserve the right to do things however they want to do and not be accountable to a larger community. And I'm sure, they TikTok, for example, has a partnership with the Israeli government. These corporations work with AIPAC. They get donations from Zionist donors and things like that. So they're always going to be hedging this line between trying to make those people happy and also not be shamed as a company for carrying out totally egregious censorship of Palestinians and Palestinian organizations.
Speaking of TikTok, I woke up today to a notification that our latest video was deleted, and that comes on the heels of my entire account from TikTok being deleted. And then I had to submit another appeal. It was reviewed and restored, right? So they try and take you down, not necessarily to silence you forever, but just to provide that chilling effect and to impede the flow of information, right?
Yeah, I'm worried about my personal account now too, because I got a notification that my personal account, Nerdeen K, could be deleted. And they took my story down after I posted it. My story was a screenshot of all of the posts that Instagram said that WOL was taken down for. It's like, oh, your account may be removed, and it lists all the posts. I just posted that on my personal story. They took it down. They said that my account could be deleted because of this. And I looked at, older posts. Now it's like a bunch of posts from May until now, at least 5 posts that were taken down. And the more, you accumulate, the more likely it is that your account could be taken down forever. And one of them was actually a post that I posted. It was a bunch of screenshots of Zionists reaching out to me in my DMs, cursing me out, saying misogynistic things, saying all these nasty things and threatening me. And I would screenshot those and post those just to let people know what's going on. And then I would get it would be taken down from my account, and I would be warned that my account may be deleted because I'm complaining about Zionists who are harassing me online. Meanwhile, the accounts of those harassing me are still up and they haven't faced any repercussions. So they allow and facilitate the harassment, the abuse, the bullying of Palestinian women, of Palestinian organizations on social media. And then when we even try to draw attention to it by just saying that it's happening, we're the ones who get threatened to be deleted. We're the ones who are censored.
Yeah, it's a pretty nifty system where Zionists do the violence, right? Perpetrate all of the violence. Then Palestinians just try and talk about it, but that gets their account flagged and reported and deleted.
For violence.
Yeah, for the violence that the Zionists are responsible for. It's pretty nifty, you got to admit.
I mean, Instagram and Facebook are basically admitting that, certain violence is okay. I mean,
yes.
Even this week, they said that calling for violence against Russians is okay, right? So I'm sure maybe they're not announcing this publicly, but by the way that they're moving, calling for violence against Palestinians seems perfectly okay. And calling for self-defense of Palestinians is not okay. So I'm sure they have these definitions in their internal codes that they're not sharing with us.
Yeah, we look forward to that email.
I just want to be clear, though, that every time we had a post removed, whether it be on the Palestine pod, which was pretty rare, it happened once or twice, or on our own individual accounts, every single time we were able to get the post restored because every single time it was an error. every single time Instagram said, oh yeah, that wasn't really what we said that it was. So it's fine. It's restored. So we've never actually violated the terms that they say that we are guilty of violating, but our accounts are constantly being threatened. And that's really the message here. So
we had one post, like this post about, the political prisoner who got COVID. It's been in review for months and months now, like for like 2 or 3 months, and it's still in review, but we've never been able to get anything restored. And even though it's clear, it doesn't violate it. Like, you look at the reasons and you look at the post, it doesn't comport. They don't care. They've never been transparent. They've never communicated anything with us. And we're still going to be worried about our account being taken down at any moment.
You know, what's crazy too, is I got a message because I asked a bunch of people on Instagram if they've ever had their accounts deleted for Palestine-related stuff. And the account for Handmade Palestine was deleted on January 20th. And Handmade Palestine is not even a political account. They sell handmade Palestinian products that support local artisans. They have been trying since January 20th to get their account back, which is insane to me. And they reached out to me being like, hey, we saw you got your account back. Do you have any advice for us? Because we've been trying to contest this and we've had no luck so far. And maybe part of it is because they haven't had as much of a public, outcry for their account being deleted. So it's crazy to me. There's probably so much more where that came from, so many more accounts that we're not even aware of. And it's not restricted only to the political, right? Mm-hmm. Palestinian culture is flagged and removed.
But that's why it's so important that we all stick together and uplift each other, right? Because they are going after the accounts where maybe there's not going to be as much public pressure to bring them back, but we need to spotlight those causes because we have the attention on us.
Right. Only other thing I have to say is that I've gotten maybe so far 30, upwards of 30 different messages from people that said that they were no longer following the Palestine Pod. And they definitely were following the Palestine Pod before. So I know that Instagram is removing our followers. They've done it on my own personal account, and now they're doing it on the Palestine Pod. But I got a flood of messages from people saying I had to refollow. And I keep posting it and just letting the world know in my stories, hey, this is what they're doing. And that's something I've never gotten any sort of an explanation for, nor have I ever been able to challenge it and get those followers back. And I definitely will bring this up in our conversation with Facebook and Instagram.
That is important. And that's something that we tend to forget about because, they take such egregious actions by deleting us altogether, by threatening our accounts and removing posts that, we don't even have the time and energy to talk about the shadow banning. But even, throughout this week, people would share screenshots of the stories they made right before and after sharing like a WOL post, for example. And like the view count is so much higher right before, they share something from WOL. And then when they share something from WOL, the engagement becomes much lower. And it's just, even when we were organizing protests this summer, you would check the insights on a post and the shares would be like 6,000 shares and the likes would be like 3,000, which is very, disproportionate. We have almost 60,000 followers. So, we did, and we have been reaching so many people before, but then there's just times where it's like, it's like a faucet that they just turn off. They're like, they redirect, they don't let any more engagement come to this account. And, that's something that we haven't even been able to address properly because I'm sure they're never going to admit to the shadow banning. But, even features like, click this link when you swipe up, that was taken away from our account. Being able to create ads, that was taken from our account. So many features that come with, having over 10,000 followers or having like a business or a creator account are just stripped from you without explanation or recourse. And that's, something that people don't even, think of compared to, accounts being like straight up deleted, which is of course way more urgent. But yeah, now we're stuck in this place where these initial problems still exist. So even though we got our account back, it doesn't necessarily feel like a victory because it's a confirmation that, this can happen again. It could be permanent next time. And, all of these things haven't been addressed and they're only, getting worse without being addressed.
I want to say thanks to those fucking dweebs who thought that they could silence us because they've only made me double down more so in my efforts. I feel stronger, more motivated than ever. and they've brought more eyes to us, right? We jumped from 13.2 to like 14.5 last time I checked. So, shouts out to those idiots who, and what's crazy is we weren't doing the numbers that they think we were doing. Like they are so worried. We have a rogue nuclear power worried about what we post on Instagram. And it wasn't even reaching that many people, but because they tried to stamp us out, it started reaching a ton more people. We got a flood of support. So thank you so much to those people who are so insecure that they can't even deal with the existence of a Palestinian narrative on social media.
Well, look, Act.il. I don't know if you guys.
Yes, they disappeared. They dissolved.
Well, all that means is that they're going to go back to their discords and their private discussion groups, because what they were doing was they were announcing their moves to the public, and they allowed for Palestinians to also download the app and just react to what they were doing. So they're just going to be more private in their efforts. They're not going to stop Hasbara manual.
Exactly. But it goes to show that, they are being continuously exposed for their actions, and they have to stop and reassess and think of different ways to move forward. Because even with me, I'm not a stranger to this. My school got 19,000 emails that were directed to them from Act.il expressly calling for me to be expelled or disciplined from my university.
19,000?
That's all?
They're probably all bots, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't even think
they're scraping information using a third-party app in unauthorized ways.
Seriously.
You know what I mean?
Seriously.
It would, you click on the Act.il mission. It would be send an email to CUNY to get this Palestinian who attacked Jews out of her university. All fabricated, all insane, all lies. And it would write this whole long email with the comms director. They know who to target. They're not just going for the administration, but also the public facing social media, right? Sending them a letter, demanding that I get expelled. And instead, this forced my university to publish a public statement in support of me, writing my name out in the statement and defending Palestinian free speech, defending Palestinian activism, condemning, in their own words, the university's word, anti-Palestinianism, which is the first statement of its kind from any university from the US to come out directly, because I could show that all this harassment, all this abuse I was facing was coming mostly from this app that was funded by the Israeli government, that works part and parcel with the Israeli military. And, they really gave us that on a silver platter to show how invested they are in abusing and bullying Palestinian women, Palestinian students, and the university was basically forced to respond at that point. So like you said, I think they're going to take more private ways to do this, because it really shows the urgency of supporting Palestine when you see how much money is poured into literally abusing, college students for speaking about Palestine, for being Palestinian.
Yeah, and I actually know people who have infiltrated those private Discord. Shouts out, gang. They've got spies, we got spies. And so it's I know that they're even more virulent, even more racist, even more disgusting behind closed doors than when they put it out in public. And they do it when they put it out in public. They make it so easy for people that you just click one or two links, and all of a sudden now you've got a public propaganda campaign that is enacted.
It's astroturfing. It's creating manufactured outrage campaigns.
Yeah.
These people are not real. There are no real pillars in the Jewish community being expel Nerdeen from CUNY School of Law. It's this imagined community that they create. And it's so transparent. They think that, they're using the age of the internet to their advantage by, creating this narrative, but it quickly deflates the second that you look at it.
Yeah, it's an account whose profile pic is a poodle. You know what I mean? And they're you got to expel Nerdeen. It's you're a dog. Why do you even care about law school?
So Mondoweiss was reporting about the removal of the Act.il app. And I just quickly looked at the article. One of the quotes in the article is from Michael Buchert, Vice President of Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East. And I think he hit the nail on the head when he said, The app was destined to fail because the problem facing Israel today is not the result of misinformation or lies, but of a growing awareness of the reality of Israeli apartheid itself. And this is something that an app is incapable of solving. Because the entire premise of the app was that, oh, this misinformation is being spread about Israel. And the principal complaint that we have is the way that we are being treated by this system. And that is a legitimate complaint. And your app can't fix that, no matter what your app tries to do, how many bots you put on us.
Yeah, have you seen the ads that they run for Act.il? Have y'all ever seen those where they have like these like sexy, like dressed up women, which is what they do to promote the IDF? It's really weird how they like always try to use misogyny and just like sexualizing women to whitewash and to promote Zionism and genocide. But like, yeah, it's basically like these women like telling this guy they can be his hero if he goes and, you know, defends against misinformation against Israel. But, you know, it's not misinformation. Like they're the ones actually, you know, pushing the misinformation. So it's again this whole thing of acting like you're a victim, right? But then actually being the one who's victimizing, who's oppressing other people.
Yeah, they treat those ads like old Burger King ads, you know, where they're just like, you too could enjoy settler colonialism.
But also it like plays on like the notion that like there's like a geeky guy behind a computer screen that like is going to be super excited that he can get girls now because of his computer skills, like his, you know.
They're like, hey, we know you're a loser who has no ability to talk to women, and we're just going to like flame the fire of that fantasy right here.
Right. But you can now get women.
Yeah. Hey,
go on.
Couple clicks and you're a badass.
Yeah.
That's what they do on birthright trips. They get the hot soldiers to like get Americans to move there and become part of the army. Literally. They're like, you too can, you know, hook up with this like sexy, like Israeli Zionist, like killer of children. But, you know, you just have to join in on that fun yourself.
It's a literal investment strategy, right? Because they don't care where the money comes from. They just need bodies and money. Like that's why they're one of the last countries that's still doing trade with Russia right now. They haven't condemned the invasion and they are still allowing oligarchs to flee to their, you know, settler colony and spend money there. Whereas nearly every other country is like, we don't take your money anymore.
Oh man.
What an episode. This shit is fire, dog. This shit is fire.
What else do you want to talk about?
We can go to lighter stuff now. You know what I mean? I don't know. I feel like we covered everything that's like heavy, but we could, I don't know.
Bennett advises Zelensky to surrender.
Yes, actually, that's a great segue.
What the fuck?
That's a great segue because Bennett was still acting as like an intermediary.
He was supposed to be the guy who was going to make peace.
He's supposed to be the moderator. And he goes in and he is like, hey, actually, you should just give up. That's his advice. He might have thought he was talking to a boss. I don't know, you know?
Oh my God. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett told Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that he recommends Ukraine take the offer made by the Russian president to end the war, which includes many Ukrainian sacrifices. Okay. According to the official, Zelensky did not take Bennett's advice. The source claimed that the phone call was initiated by Bennett. If I were you, I would think about the lives of my people and take the offer.
Are they trying to keep the Ukrainian settlers?
Oh yeah. Well, some of them.
100%.
They're trying to keep some of the Jewish ones, but there are like a bunch of people who are not Jewish who are coming over, and they've actually said this is not sustainable. We cannot allow refugees who are not Jewish to live here because we need Jews, basically.
It's like, oh, we got our settlers. You guys can just give up now. Our demographic threat has been addressed.
Yes, exactly. Because the Jerusalem Post reported that a day ago. And then Reuters comes out 4 hours ago and says, Ukraine trusts in Israeli mediation, denies Bennett advised caving to Russia. So this is like, again, an example of Israel said so because it was reported by the Jerusalem Post, which is an Israeli newspaper, a day ago. And now a few hours ago, Zelensky's like, no, that's not what he said. He didn't say we should cave. So like, what is this like concept of like everybody, you know, like bowing down before Israel and trying to cover for them? Israel will admit to something, and then the people who are like the victims of the Israeli violence will try to cover for them. Why?
Yeah, you remember when Dick Cheney shot a guy and then that guy apologized to Dick Cheney?
Yes, it's exactly like
That's the diplomatic relations that Israel has
so
with every
weird.
country.
It's so weird.
Well, like Biden said, if Israel didn't exist, the US would have to create one.
Yeah, the best investment that we've ever made, he said. And it's like, I don't know. I was in Bitcoin pretty early. So
it's just a giant US military base at this point. And that's like that connection too, is like we're not just fighting Israel, we're also fighting the US, and this is why, these social media companies ultimately bow down to Israel too, is because they are US based, because there's that settler colonial solidarity between the US and Israel, where, the US doesn't go out and say what Israel is doing is wrong, because then that would be an admission of guilt of how this country was founded to begin with.
Certainly.
Absolutely.
We're constantly drawing the connection between Native people from Turtle Island and Palestine.
I remember the week that all the posts about Sheikh Jarrah went missing, and this was, I think, like right before Nakba Day. There was also a massive campaign about missing Indigenous women that was being censored and shadow banned on Instagram at the same time. So we're literally talking about being killed, being kidnapped, being taken, whether you're Indigenous Palestinian or Indigenous here in the Americas, and this is being erased off of social media. It's crazy. Like these companies aren't just anti-Palestinian, but they're literally promoting fascism. They're promoting misogyny, violence against women, by not allowing us to take up space on these platforms to send our message about these things.
Yeah, they're disappearing people in real life and then erasing any trace of outcry online. It's a full-scale effort to erase and destroy communities.
And our history, I grew up on Tumblr, which didn't censor much back then. But, that's where I learned a lot about Layla Khaled and George Habash and, these important Palestinian figures in our history. And Instagram basically made it clear you can't post about them at all because your account will be deleted. So we might have a generation of young Palestinian activists who, if they don't hear about these things in their home or in other political spaces, if they're just learning about Palestine online, which is, the biggest resource that everyone has to learn about Palestine, then they're not being taught about Layla Khaled or George Habash, or they might have to do like an extra layer of work or get into like a different community to be able to learn about them to begin with.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's especially important for people in exile. I think I told Michael at some point, but I started to learn Palestinian folk songs as an adult, because I never grew up with them. So I had to go on YouTube and type in Palestinian folk songs and now, or Palestinian children's songs, because I missed out on all of that growing up. So now I don't want to lose that. And I don't want, future generations to lose that because of me. So now I have to learn it outside of the natural setting of being in my environment, of being in Palestine. So the internet is essential for that.
100%. And that's why we even created the space, for WOL, to be able to create that revolutionary spirit and bring that back alive for Palestinians in exile. Because growing up in a post 9/11 New York City, people didn't even say they were Palestinian. I grew up with Palestinians who would say they were Lebanese or Jordanian or whatever other Arab country they could find some relation to. But, there was that automatic association of Palestinians with terrorism.
But we had nothing to do with 9/11, which is insane. Which is insane.
The first terrorists is what, the way that people in New York used to look at us. But what's funny is I think the actual first terrorist attack that occurred in the Middle East was carried out by Zionists against the King David Hotel.
100%. It was the early Zionist militias blowing up public buildings and creating this false narrative that Jews are unsafe in their home countries in the Levant.
The JDL is a terrorist org, and they still come out to protest. They're considered terrorists even by the United States. Yeah. But they still publicly, outwardly mobilize. And when they come, the cops literally protect them.
And you really got to be terroristy to get designated as a terrorist by the United States, the premier organization of terrorism in the world.
Exactly.
We never had anywhere to go to learn about Palestine. I even went to Islamic Arabic school in Brooklyn my whole life, which is why, I can even make these connections with people that I grew up with and stuff like that. But, even at school, they would they would kind of tell us the truth about Palestine, but also make it clear, like, we can't be like going around saying these things publicly because we could get in trouble for it. So it like reinforces this idea that you can't flaunt that you're Palestinian, you can't talk about it much. At one point, they even like banned kufiyas and Palestine bracelets from the school. And this is an Islamic Arabic school. Like and at some level, I get that people are afraid and they don't want to be associated with, all these negative things that Muslims are associated with, but like also at what cost, to Palestinians who are basically being told like our identity doesn't matter because, we're going to be accused of all these bad things.
Or that our identity is criminal. Like just to say that you're Palestinian is like a war cry or something. We're a people, we're a culture, we have a very rich history, and we've been occupied. That's our story. And that's not a war cry. That's just our reality. And if you have sympathy for people who are experiencing occupations, like Michael said, on our episode last week, we now see that people are actually able to understand the notion of occupation and be sympathetic towards those that have experienced this. Well, then you can be sympathetic to everybody who's experienced that, not just people that look like you or sound like you, or share a similar culture as you.
Exactly. It feels like there's almost been a 180 thanks to Palestinians who've so diligently spent so much of our time growing up just trying to make these connections for ourselves, telling each other these stories, sharing the stories that our grandparents told us. And much of this had to be done online because there are no institutions or programs where this was being done. Thankfully, now there's so many amazing organizations out there, like, Palestinian Youth Movement, like Within Our Lifetime. Palestinian Youth Movement is also in the article, I think, that's going to come out that we're both in, because they're also, facing shadow banning. But, we've had to create these spaces, fighting tooth and nail to make sure that they can even exist in the first place, to come together as a people and to continue to educate people about our struggle, about our culture. And that perseverance, that resiliency that we have is something that people see and admire. And I think, makes them not only want to support the Palestinian cause and struggle further, but also become politicized about other struggles, that they want to fight for. I know so many people who now fight against US imperialism, who fight for Black liberation, who fight for, all of these different things, fight against capitalism, but they were inducted into this whole atmosphere to begin with through the Palestinian struggle, because it is the most like blatant representation of so many of these things. And it's a very good litmus test for people's politics.
That's what Dr. Angela Davis said, is Palestinian liberation is the litmus test for whether or not you're an activist.
100%, especially in places like California or New York, where people pretend to be liberal and progressive, but Palestine's conveniently cut out of the conversation.
BLM in the bio, birthright on the grid. You know what I mean?
These Zionists, man. Our page was taken down the day before the New York law exam, which I need to take in addition to the bar to be able to practice law in New York. I'm in my last, semester, like I said, and I really, I'm pretty sure they see the dates, because every time I have a final, every time I have like a major exam or anything like that, some crazy thing happens, either like a barrage of attacks directly towards my university, which happens literally every semester, to my Instagram page just being censored all over the place. And we know that this is a tactic they use. I mean, Ramadan is coming up on April 2nd, so just in a few weeks. And we know every Ramadan, there's a renewed attack either on, Palestinians worshiping at Al-Aqsa, families in Gaza. We're constantly devastated whenever there are important events, whenever there's like a harder time. And yeah, it's just crazy that this all happened right before I took that exam. It definitely stressed me out. I don't know if it, affected my performance, but that's also another like cost that's rarely seen or discussed. It's these just crazy tactics that they take to really demoralize us and make us feel like everything that we build can end up being disappeared. Like there's WOL's page has probably existed for 6 or 7 years at this point. Like there's 6 or 7 years of work of dozens of people, put into this page, archive posts, current posts like where we research history, where we made content, like so many different kinds of it. They can just pull that rug from under your feet, like at the hardest or most difficult times.
Yeah, they're constantly trying to erase any sort of record of Palestinian history, right? Whether it be demolishing, destroying entire towns, renaming all of the streets, defacing cemeteries. You know what I mean? They won't even let dead Palestinians be where they are. And there's also been concerted efforts to conceal government official documents about the Nakba, right? The documents were collected from Israel state archives and taken to locked vaults in the Ministry of Defense. Journalist Hagar Shazov from the newspaper Haaretz discovered this concealment when she visited state archives to re-examine documents that had been revealed before and had been cited by some of Israel's most prominent historians. She was told that the documents were removed from the archives, and she then tracked them down to the Director of Security of the Defense Establishment. This is an institution that is officially charged with protecting Israel's nuclear secrets, something they don't even admit to, and not with hiding facts that deal with the establishment of the settler state. Here's just a few quotes from the hidden documents. Quote, in the village of Saf Saf, 52 men were bound in ropes, dangled into a pit where they were shot. In a raid on the village of Saf Saf, we blew up 20 houses with everything inside, with people sleeping there, I imagine. Within 48 hours, I laid these villages flat. Ben Gurion determined that we must destroy them so they will not have anywhere to go back to. Jewish hostile acts were the main reason for the population's immigration. Can you imagine why they hid those documents?
I'm surprised they didn't just burn them.
Yeah.
Like, why even keep them? Why keep them in a locked vault, you know? Just burn them and rewrite history like you do anyway, right?
It's just funny because, you know, there are public statements that are made that they can't hide, that don't contradict this. So I'm just like, sometimes I wonder why they hide anything at all, because they're also so brazen. They're like, yeah, we're going to stomp over human rights. We're going to commit complete genocide against Palestinians, and you're not going to do anything about it. But this reminds me of, I was speaking at an event at Brooklyn College, SJP, last semester, and I was talking about the Tantura massacre, you know, in which Palestinians were literally forced to dig their own graves before being shot into them. And there was a Zionist in the crowd. It was on Zoom, but you know, she raised her hand to speak and like basically accused me of blood libel, which is a common tactic.
They love that word, blood libel.
Like, what do Palestinians have to do with the protocols of elders of Zion? Like, I don't know where this argument is being made, but you know, she starts saying that I'm making up this massacre. It never happened. And she's like asking me to fact check it, asking me to for a source. And I don't want to, you know, be beholden to these Zionist demands. You go fact check it. I know what I'm talking about.
We know people whose families were murdered in the Tantura massacre. Exactly. We read firsthand accounts on our podcast. We did an entire episode dedicated to the Tantura massacre, and we read firsthand accounts that were published in a book by Professor Francis Doyle from the University of Illinois. He's a professor of international law, and he has interviewed people whose families were murdered in the Tantura massacre.
Yeah, sure, but there's some girl on Zoom.
My grandma's the one who told me, you know, about the massacre, and she knew people, you know, from that village who witnessed this, who said this to her. But literally a few weeks after that, the Israeli government did admit to this massacre actually occurring, but it's crazy. Like, of course, they're not going to be admitting most of the things that they're doing to Palestinians. In some situations, they're forced to because all of the evidence is there and they just can't, you know, run away from it. But it's crazy how nobody accepts that. Nobody wants to take that as reality when Palestinians say, hey, this is what, you know, they're doing to us.
This is what happened to me. Yeah,
exactly. Israelis say we did it. Now, you know, not only are they like admitting it, but they're kind of also being praised for admitting it instead of being attacked for doing it, instead of being held accountable for doing it.
They're bragging about not allowing Palestinian spouses citizenship, right? There was that tweet where it was like Jewish and democratic state 1, a state of all of its citizens 0. And it's like, oh, so you admit to being an ethno-fascist. You're happy about that. Like, hey, so you have a big event coming up. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, Land Day, March 30th. This is a day that historically has been commemorated by Palestinians because it marks a massacre that took place against Palestinian protesters who were protesting against increased expropriation of Palestinian land, which we know didn't just begin or end with the Nakba, but is something that is happening to this day. So it's a yearly commemoration. Folks are going to be mobilizing it worldwide. So I'm sure if you don't have a protest in your area, you can organize one, but you might have a protest happening in your area. We're organizing the New York City protest, which is going to be in front of the Friends of the IDF headquarters here in New York City at 5 o'clock. And, of course, they raise money for the genocidal Zionist Israeli army. What a disgusting name to have, like friends of child killers,
right?
Friends of genocide.
Good buddies of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're going to be protesting them, demanding land back. And really, like, the essence of our struggle is also about land that we've been kicked out of, that we've been fighting for over 73 years to return to, land that I can't step foot on as long as it's occupied because I've been banned by the occupying entity. And we really want to try to get Land Day to the level of consciousness that, Nakba Day has grown to. When we started organizing Nakba Day protests, they weren't that big. They're pretty small. Of course, this summer, our Nakba Day protest on May 15th in Bay Ridge had almost 50,000 people at it, which is never seen anything like that before. And it took, 7 years of consistently organizing a protest every single year to get it to that level. And we really want to make sure Land Day gets to that level of consciousness as well. We've organized for Land Day protests in the past, and we hope to build on the momentum bigger and bigger to connect it to, what the essence of our struggle hasn't changed. It's been the same thing. We've been kicked out of our land. We've been subjected to this occupying entity, and that's never changed. And we're always going to fight it until we achieve complete and total liberation of every inch of Palestine, not just for the West Bank, not just for Gaza, but also for Palestinians who come from 48, who come from Jaffa, Haifa, and all the Palestinian cities that have been renamed to Israeli cities.
That's the promo right there. Cut it.
Yeah, that was great.
All right, Nerdeen, thank you so much for coming on the pod. We so appreciate your stories, your insight, all of your activism and work, everything you're doing.
Thank you both so much. It was good to meet you.
And folks, thank you all so much for listening to another episode of the Palestine Pod. Go ahead and follow us on Instagram at the Palestine Pod while it still exists. You know what I mean? Shouts out censorship. Send us a email at palestinepod@gmail.com. Check out our website, www.palestinepod.com, and check us out on Patreon, www.patreon.com/PalestinePod. That's been another episode. Hope you all have a great day.
I just got the craziest news like this second right now.
Oh yeah, what was it?
We're back online apparently. I haven't even seen it yet.
I'll
confirm for myself. Holy shit.
Get that fresh look. Ooh.
Reaction face, right? I swear to God, like
this is happening live, right?
Right now. Like I'm getting a bunch of signal messages.
Let's go.